Hello, welcome to Kitchen Basics 101, where I teach you the bare bone basics as if you've never cooked a day in your life from the perspective of a mom. I don't know what to call these, breakfast potatoes? Oh, but here's what I have found. I have found that if I wash these spuds up and I slice them up and I try to fry them in a frying pan, what usually happens is the centers will get like gummy or the outsides won't get crisp. It just never really works for me. And forever I would do them that way. I would just slice them up and I'd fry them in a pan and they just never turned out quite the way I wanted. But in recent years, I've discovered a little parboil makes all the difference. So now what I do is I put them in my pan and I boil them until they're like fork tender. Then I slice them up and then I fry them in the pan, and I'm going to show you how I do it today. I have a similar process now for hash browns because the same thing was happening. The hash browns were like gummy in the middle, and I don't want that. I want a nice flaky potato texture in the middle. So now if I'm making hash browns, I will also parboil them, and I'll usually throw them in the fridge if I'm not going to make hash browns right then. And then when I want to make hash browns, I just take them out and shred them up. So step one is you can wash your spuds and give them a good scrub if you want. Spuds are pretty dirty. I'm gonna boil these spuds so it's a little bit less of a concern, but if you're making baked potatoes, you definitely wanna scrub them up pretty good and get as much of that dirt off as you can. I'm not gonna peel them because I like the skins, and the skins are full of lots of nutrients. So, cold pan, cold potatoes, filtered, clean, drinkable water until they are just covered, which was quite a bit. And then I'm going to throw them on high heat and get this cranking and boiling. Once they're boiling like this, I'm going to put a little sprinkle of salt in the water, maybe a little more. 2 little sprinkles of salt in the water. There's not really a time here, but I'm just going to periodically check them with my fork. Not quite done yet. They've been boiling for probably 5 or 10 minutes. Boiling 25 minutes. It's going to vary. Well, your potatoes, your climate, lots of things. And I can get the fork pretty well in them. They're not completely cooked. I'm going to fish them out of the boiling water with a slotted spoon. I'm going to put them in this glass. That's a heat-safe bowl. I'm just going to let them cool off here. They're going to residually cook a little bit more while they sit in this bowl. And then I'm going to show you. Now, at this stage, you could pop this in the fridge. I mean, I would let it cool a little first. And then you just have them ready for whenever you want to make hash browns or breakfast potatoes. But I'd say definitely use them up within the week, or, you know, they're going to go bad. So we're just going to let them sit here and cool off, and then I'll show you how I make my breakfast potatoes. My potatoes have cooled down, and then you can slice them however you want. You can make them into chunks, you can make them into whatever. I usually just make them into big discs, but you can chunk them up however you like. We're just going to fry them off in a frying pan with a little salt and pepper and butter, and they're just so delicious. But again, you could like cube it, you could leave it in big chunks like this. It doesn't really matter how you want to do it. I do pretty thick slices, but again, it doesn't matter. You can make it like a hash, however you want to cut it up. The real trick here, though, is because we parboiled them and they're basically cooked, all I have to do is get it crispy. I'm just going to slice them up, and then I'm going to show you. I'm going to put some butter in a hot pan, and we're just going to fry them off. They're like home-style breakfast potatoes. So delicious. Pan go in here on medium-high heat. And put a knob of butter in. Swishy around. Okay. Then I'm going to take my potatoes, and I'm just going to lay them in the pan, flat side, around in a circle. So we want them to get good contact with the pan and the butter. All we're doing is putting a delicious, crisp, buttery bite on them. Turn the heat down just a little bit to medium. I'm going to do pepper. I love pepper. And not too much, but a little bit of salt. I say not too much because we salted the water, plus the butter has a little salt in it, so we're not going to get too crazy with the salt. We're just going to leave them here for a minute or two to get crisp on one side, and then we're going to turn in about 5 minutes, but it's going to vary depending on the thickness of your potatoes and your heat. That's what you want, nice crispy texture. So now I'm just gonna go in and turn them over. I'm using the same fork that I used earlier to check their doneness, but I'm being careful not to touch my pan with the fork, because if you mess up the surface of your pan, it ain't gonna be non-stick anymore and it's not gonna be safe. So we're just, look at them, look at how glorious they are. Now if those potatoes were greedy and they took up all your butter, you could add a little more butter to the pan. I think I'm looking good right now. I'm not gonna add any more butter. But I'm gonna put a little salt and pepper on this side. Again, not too much, just a little. We want them to have good flavor. We want them to be seasoned. And then we're gonna do a couple minutes on this side. Probably less, but we'll check on them. You serve that under a nice runny egg or as a side dish. Winner every time. Look at how delicious. Now you could have chopped them up into little pieces and made it into like a hash. And then you could have added like some veg or some cheese or some scrambled eggs, made it into a hash. Having those parboiled potatoes really does the trick, but I just love them just like this, pan fried. So delicious.